Imagine this. 5 friends who grew up on monster movies, VHS tapes, and impossible dreams. They pool their life savings, borrow a clapped-out riverboat, and decide, right now, to make the movie they've wanted since they were kids, Anaconda. No studio, no safety net, a $9,400 loan. And then, the snake goes missing. That's not a line from a studio memo. That's the opening salvo of a true-to-life indie run-and-gun adventure where the stakes aren't just the film, they're everything they've ever believed in. Love, friendship, the courage to say, let's do it. If you think this is a joke, wait until the jungle wakes up. Stick around, because what follows is messy and beautiful and terrifying. And if you like stories about dreamers who bet everything on a single shot, hit subscribe to Celebspill right now. SFX, quick ding, VO whisper. You won't want to miss this. There's a line all filmmakers learn. Some call it a superstition, others a promise, that a movie worth making will keep you awake at night. For Doug, Derek, Claire, Kenny, and Cody, that line turned into a vow. They weren't studio executives with safety margins and market research. They were kids from the same block who traded baseball cards and trading barbs about who could scream the loudest during cheap horror flicks. Years later, grown and wiser but not yet broken, they decided to keep one promise made in a dim, fluorescent convenience store at age 12, to make the movie they loved. The plan on paper was small and ridiculous. It fit inside an envelope stamped $2, $5 million dream, made with $9,400. That number became a talisman, a joke, a challenge. Indie shooting, a riverboat, a snake handler, real animals if possible, or at least something the audience would buy. Doug and Claire would be the leads. Kenny would shoot. Derek would produce, and half the time forget what he'd produced until the camera rolled. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Cody would be the heart, the guy who reminds everyone what they're risking it for. They wanted grit, not glam. They wanted the clatter of practical effects, the surprise of real water, the tension of a camera operator who actually felt the danger. And in every goofy, expensive choice, there was a kind of prayer. If we make it honest, maybe the adrenaline will make the magic real. So they signed paperwork they didn't fully read, rented a rusted riverboat with a missing anchor, and borrowed the kind of optimism only people who love each other too much carry. They approved a loan for up to $9,400, which, in the clear light of accounting, seemed laughable. But in the warm glow of a living room where they'd watched Anaconda on repeat as kids, it made sense. Then they found out they no longer had a snake for their snake movie. You can imagine the silence. You can imagine the frantic calls. Where's the snake? Who had the snake? Did anyone check the crate? There's a comedy in that sudden, absurd panic, but there's a deeper, darker thing too. A symbol. The missing snake becomes the narrative's pivot. The dream is intact, but the means to realize it are gone. The crew faces the cruel, comedic emptying of the promise, and so they do what dreamers do when everything goes wrong. They go into the jungle, not to shoot the movie from the dock, not to fake the river with blue screens. They load what they can, and they go. Because in a way, the jungle is the only honest place left to find what they need. The move from studio light to open sky is a shift from performative to primal. It's a bet that truth lives in the unplanned moments, in the way a camera fogs from breath, in the way a handheld lens trembles when its operator steps in mud. They find more than they bargained for. The jungle is not a set. It doesn't wait for shot lists or call sheets. It has its own moods. It swallows light, it rearranges plans, and the friends, so buoyed by friendship and hubris, meet the real cost of their daring. First, there's laughter, the nervous, brittle kind. They laugh to keep fear from settling like moss on their shoulders. They laugh at the absurdity of using Doug as bait. Yes, someone actually suggests it. There's this painful, almost ritualistic moment where they argue, the kind of argument that becomes a test of fidelity. Is this a real idea, or are we losing our minds? Someone asks. Someone else answers with a prayer. God would have wanted this. And the group, half joking, half devout in their belief, moves forward. Not every hope survives the river. The script doesn't teach you how to grieve on a boat with a busted motor and a camera that keeps rolling. It doesn't tell you how to climb out of the kind of shock that stops your hands from moving. If this sounds like a melodrama, it's because it is. Life's ironies twist cinematic stories into raw moments we weren't meant to rehearse for. They discover someone, an accident, a misstep, a wrong turn, and the camera keeps rolling because habit is a cruel reflex. He's right behind you, someone says. There's confusion, there's the touch of a heavy hand. There's the thing on someone's back that feels like a long, wrong story. These beats are heavy. Yet it's in the heaviness that the human stuff happens. The whispered confessions, the promise to keep the movie alive in memory if need be, the decision to choose honesty with the audience over a safe lie. They decide to keep rolling because the camera often becomes a witness when memory is unreliable. Film can be the honest thing left when speech fails. What emerges from this chaos is not a horror film in the cheap sense, but a horror that's intimately human. The horror of facing failure as a group, of seeing a dream cost more than you planned, of realizing that sometimes art takes more than it gives. That's heavy, but it's also where the film's heart is found. Because for all the terror, for all the missteps, there are luminous points of grace. Claire and Derek share a small, tender exchange under a canopy of stars, not scripted but found. They say, "I love you," in a way the script never demanded, and in that moment the camera does something sacred. It stops being a rectangle and becomes a listener. Claire touches Derek's face, and we understand why two people would put everything on hold to risk it all for a dream. Nothing about honesty in film is easy. They reclaim the spirit of the original Anaconda, the absurd danger, the camp thrills, the big snake energy, but they stitch into it their own truth. Friendship, mortality, the dizzying faith that making something together can be a way of surviving loss. And then, like every true story worth telling, there's the moment of reckoning. They choose their ending. Not the studio happy note where everything ties in a neat bow. Not the cynical punchline. They give themselves permission to be messy. The film becomes, in microcosm, their lives. They accept imperfections, and somehow those imperfections give the film texture and humanity. The final act is not about defeating a monster. It's about endurance. About the people who keep each other upright while the world rocks the boat beneath them. Someone survives. Someone loses more than a role. They walk away with film reels, with scars, with a small, ridiculous, enormous thing. A movie someone else would pay millions for authenticity. They made it with stolen time, with borrowed energy, with an undercurrent of grief and joy that can't be faked. The meta layer, Paul Rudd and Jack Black leading this reboot, is an elegant wink. Their casting is a reminder that comedy and pathos live together. Rudd's steady warmth and Black's electric unpredictability become tools for humanizing the chaos. They lean into the absurdity of reboot culture and the tenderness of telling a story about people who believe in the magic of film. This version of Anaconda is a love letter to the messy capitalism of creativity, to the people who will risk everything for a shot at making something real. When your hero in a story says, "We've dreamed of making this movie ever since we were kids," you know the stakes are personal. That sentence is the heart. It's why they risk being mockable. It's why the camera crouches to catch a tear. It's why the audience leans in. And let's be honest, the world loves a second chance. Hollywood loves it. Audiences love it. But the heart of this story isn't the second chance in the marketplace. It's the second chance at being honest, with each other and with themselves. They discover that the art of the reboot is less about reviving a franchise and more about reviving a promise. It's a promise to remember who you were at 12 and a willingness to fight, literally sometimes, to be that person again. There's humor in the absurd budget breakdowns. $2, $5 million vision, $9,400 reality, and there's sadness in watching people make small sacrifices. Cameras mortgaged, relationships stretched, futures wagered for a reel of celluloid that may never find an audience. But the real miracle is that they do it together. That, in the end, the film they made is an imperfect mirror of their love for one another. And that imperfection makes the story feel true. When the premiere happens, and yes, there is a premiere, the audience is jittery, unsure whether to laugh or to cry. They do both. The film is messy, startling, and uncomfortably honest, and people respond. In a world of glossy, predictable remakes, an honest mess is rarer than we think. If you leave with one feeling, let it be this. Making art is a small, dangerous, beautiful rebellion. It asks you to pay in full for the currency of your truth. It requires you to go into the dark with people you trust, to be foolish together, to keep rolling when your hands are shaking. And sometimes, against all odds, you come back with something that matters. This reboot of Anaconda, with Rudd and Black, with a missing snake, with a river that ate a call sheet and spat out a truth, is less about the snake and more about the people trying to get it on screen. It's a love letter to everyone who ever stood on the edge of a crazy idea and whispered, "Let's do it." If that whispered "let's" made your heart race, if the ragged edges of creativity call to you, give this story a share. Drop a comment about the most ridiculous thing you or your friends ever risked for a dream. We'd love to hear it. And hey, if you want more deep dives, more weird behind-the-scenes miracles, and more voiceovers that feel like late-night conversations. Do the thing that helps us keep telling stories. Subscribe to Celebspill. Hit the bell, stay strange, and come back for the next one. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to Celebspill for more cinematic deep dives and voiceover features. We turn small, wild ideas into stories you can feel. See you in the next one.